Hi, and welcome to springtime. Wow, the colors are just starting to emerge, and I'm seeing pastel pinks in my neighborhood and really soft greens as the buds start to open. I'll show you a really simple way to create a space where you can control the color a little tiny bit and then do an ink drawing so that you end up with a beautiful postcard to send to someone to wish them a beautiful season. The materials are really simple. Start with some watercolor paper. I found this whole pile of postcards on Amazon. It was a pretty good deal and it's nice paper. I suggest using a brush pen where when you put the mark down, it's water reactive. For instance, if I put that mark down like that and I take my paintbrush and water and go over that, I can move that pigment into whatever space I choose. So I would suggest a brush pen. This is the Ecoline Magenta. This one is Tombow. They don't name their colors, they give them numbers. This is 725. Either of those are really fun. I'll also show you how to do that with a colored pencil that's water reactive, and you can see that little paintbrush here. This is a coral color. That'll work well. And when we play with greens instead of pinks, here's a Tombow 126, a color that I really like, or a Derwent watercolor brush, grass green. The only other thing that I recommend is some kind of a fine-tipped black marker so you can do your sketching on top of the watercolor when it dries. Here I've made a little chart for you so you can see the difference and how really they all work very much alike. So here's the Ecoline Magenta, and that's being pulled out easily by water. Here's the Tombow, and that just ends up with a little bit more pink that's a little brighter, more neon pink than the Ecoline. Here's the watercolor pencil. I made a couple of strokes with that, and the water will bleed most of those strokes together so that you can get a real soft effect. And here's my Rose Opera watercolor. I can put a bead of water color down like that, and I can pull that out and direct where that's going. So whatever you have at home is going to be really fun to work with. So to get set up, you're going to take your postcard and use whichever tool you have at home, whatever you want to play with, and draw in basically a border going around the postcard. And then you're going to take a wet brush, and notice that I'm getting the interior wet. First, I'm just dampening the interior of that rectangle, and now I'm going to pull the color in so that as it touches the damp surface, it's going to dance around and move in a little bit. The concept here is you want to pull that ink and the pigment into the center, but don't do it evenly. Let it have some areas that are thicker and more pigment, maybe like right here, and other areas that actually can stay either pure white of the paper with no pigment or very, very pale. So you want that irregularity. And I'll just go along and make sure again that I have softened the interior line, and I'm going to set that aside to dry. Now here you can see I have dampened or moistened the inside of my postcard, that rectangle, first. And now I'm going to pull a little bit of paint and go along that line. And if some of my paint falls on the outside of where it's been moistened, that will stay nice and sharp. The part that touches the water will bleed out into that moist area. And I want to just bring that out, so I'm just swiping it across randomly. Here's some more pigment, because basically what I'm setting up here is a frame for our sketch. And there's absolutely no need to worry about doing anything right or perfect, of course. The concept is a lot of water and a little pigment. And that's going to give you a space that's very soft and pastel, perfect for sketching on top of to capture these blooms. And I don't care if I've got a little funk going on right there. So I'm going to let this dry. So as I take my walks around my neighborhood and am inspired by all the growth of springtime, I received this catalog in the mail, and I was so inspired by the cover and these light greens that I created a postcard the same way I just showed you, with my Tombow pen and water on the inside, just to get that real pastel effect. And now I'm going to take my my Micron, my black pen, and using a contour line, which is kind of a wobbly and irregular line, I'm going to draw, I'm looking at these shapes here. I'm going to just draw some stick-like shapes, and I go over them to add interest. So it is definitely a wonky line, and this is what I love, is that you are aiming to not get it perfect. You're just adding some interest and some squiggles just to hint at the shapes that you're playing with. And now from here, I'm just going to go ahead and add these fun little shapes for my postcard. So here was my inspiration, and here's my super simple spring postcard ready to be sent to somebody. Let's do another one, only this time let's work with magnolia blossoms, something I saw a lot of when I was visiting Washington, D.C. recently. So again, a contour line is just kind of a loose line, getting the general shape. And I like to go off the frame just a little bit, makes it a little more interesting. And so I'm just making wiggly lines to come up and over and indicate where the general branch is. And if you have some imperfections, embrace them. That's what you're supposed to have when you draw branches in nature. So this would be my beginning branch, and then I would work on a teardrop shape, very simple teardrop, and then I put in a couple of curved lines just to show some dimension, and some bigger teardrop shapes, again with some more curved lines just to show some dimension. And I start those curved lines where it looks like that petal is behind that little bloom. And so I'll finish some teardrop shapes, maybe upside down, and then little hook-like shapes. Here's that teardrop again. And you can just be totally free with this. There's no right or wrong. It's going to look great, again, especially since it's on this beautiful pale pink background. It's going to give that feel without having to worry about painting anything accurately. So these squiggly lines just kind of help make that look more 3D and give a little more interest. And here I'll come down and keep working on my branch, and I'll add a few more blossoms and show you. Here's my finished card. So it was really easy. I just used my brush pen along the outside, wet the inside to pull the pigment in, let that completely dry. Then I used a pen and just did squiggly lines for the branches. It does help to make those branches a little darker. So feel free to go back over with some scribbly lines to get those branches a little darker. And then look at how basic. Teardrop shapes with some curved lines coming in. And come out over your border if you want, just for fun. And now you have a really nice postcard to send to someone to wish them happy spring. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you're welcoming spring where you live. For more information and tips and tricks, please check out my website, jcmamet.net.